Today, we usually read the Psalms sitting completely still. We read them in quiet living rooms with a cup of coffee. We listened to them spoken softly from a stage while sitting in padded church pews. We tend to treat them like gentle, ancient poetry, written primarily to calm the anxious mind or offer quiet comfort at the end of a difficult day. And while the Psalms certainly provide that comfort, this modern habit has caused us to lose something crucial about how they were originally experienced. Many of these ancient Hebrew poems were never meant to be read in silence. They were not written for solitary, quiet reflection. They were written to be shouted out loud by a massive crowd of people who were physically moving. Psalm 24 is one of the most famous examples of this in the entire biblical text. If you have spent any time around the Christian faith, you have likely heard its words. "The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it. Lift up your heads, you gates. Who is this King of glory?" But when we read this chapter quietly to ourselves, it can often feel like a disjointed collection of religious phrases. It seems to jump abruptly from one thought to another. First, it opens with a grand theological statement about God owning the earth. Then, without warning, it shifts into what looks like a strict moral checklist, asking who has clean hands and a pure heart. Finally, it shifts again, ending with a loud, dramatic shout directed at a set of ancient city doors. For generations, casual readers have struggled to see exactly how these three pieces fit together. At first glance, it feels like three entirely different songs stitched together into one, but that confusion only exists because we are reading it while sitting still. Psalm 24 is not a static piece of poetry. It is a three-part historical drama. It is a living, breathing liturgy designed for a very specific geographic journey. It was constructed to move. It begins by looking out at the wide expanse of creation, then it moves to a narrow, intimidating path up a steep mountain, and it finally arrives at the threshold of a royal fortress. When we read it simply as a quiet devotional, we strip away the intense environment where these words were first spoken. We miss the dust kicking up from thousands of sandals walking on a dirt road. We miss the sweat on the faces of the musicians and the priests. We miss the heavy, rhythmic breathing of men carrying an object that was so holy it could strike them dead if they made a single mistake. And most importantly, we miss the sheer, underlying terror that is vibrating just underneath the text. Because Psalm 24 was not written on a peaceful afternoon. It was written by King David for a singular, monumental, and dangerous event in the history of Israel. It was written for an event that had already gone terribly wrong once before. It was born out of a moment that forced David to realize that the presence of God is not a religious prop to be managed, but a holy fire to be deeply revered. This psalm is the literal soundtrack to a royal procession. It is the song of the Ark of the Covenant finally making its way up the brutal incline into the city of Jerusalem. And when you place these famous verses back into the dirt, the sweat, and the danger of that specific historical day, the entire poem breaks wide open. It is no longer just a loose collection of praise verses. It becomes a profound, step-by-step blueprint. It reveals exactly how the creator of the universe reclaims his ruined world, what he requires of anyone who dares to approach him, and how he ultimately takes his rightful throne as the victorious King of glory. But to understand what this psalm is actually doing, and to see the massive theological pattern hidden inside its verses, we cannot start at the gates. We have to go back to the beginning of the journey. We have to look at the terrifying event that forced David to write these exact words in the first place. The story of this psalm begins in 2 Samuel chapter 6. David has just secured Jerusalem as his capital city. He has defeated his enemies. He has built a fortress. He has centralized his political power. But David knows that a city built only on military strength is empty. If Jerusalem is going to be the true heart of Israel, it needs the presence of God. It needs the Ark of the Covenant. For decades, the Ark had been sitting in relative obscurity in a house on a hill. David gathers 30,000 of his best men to go retrieve it. He plans a massive parade. The text tells us there are harps, lyres, tambourines, castanets, and cymbals. It is supposed to be the greatest celebration in the history of the new capital. But David makes a profound mistake. He treats the holy presence of God with casual familiarity. Instead of having the priests carry the ark on their shoulders with wooden poles, exactly as the law of Moses commanded, David puts the ark on a brand new ox cart. He transports the throne of God the exact same way the Philistines transported their cargo. He treats the divine presence like a manageable object. The procession begins. The music is loud. The crowd is moving. But when they reach a flat area near a threshing floor, the oxen stumble. The cart tilts. The ark shifts. A man named Uzzah, who is walking beside the cart, reacts instinctively. He reaches out his hand to steady the ark. He tries to protect it from falling into the dirt. And the moment his bare hand touches the sacred gold, he drops dead. The music violently stops. The celebration turns to absolute horror. 2 Samuel tells us that David becomes angry, and then he becomes deeply afraid. He looks at the body of his man. He looks at the golden box, and he asks a terrifying question. How can the ark of the Lord ever come to me? David abandons the parade. He refuses to bring the ark into his city. He leaves it at the nearby house of a man named Obed-Edom. For 3 months, the ark stays there. And for 3 months, David has to sit with the crushing reality of what just happened. He learns that God is not a safe, domestic deity. His presence is not something you can casually load onto a wagon and pull into your life whenever it is convenient. God is holy. His presence is a consuming fire. If the King of the universe is going to enter your city, he will not be dragged in on your terms. He must be approached on his terms, with absolute reverence. When David finally returns 3 months later to try again, everything is changed. There are no ox carts. There are no casual shortcuts. The Levite priests are carrying the heavy wooden poles on their shoulders, bearing the physical weight of the ark. After taking just 6 steps, the entire procession stops, and David offers sacrifices. The fear of the Lord has returned to the people. This is the moment. This is the environment. This is the exact procession where the words of Psalm 24 are meant to be sung. David is no longer just moving a religious artifact into his town. He is escorting the terrifying, holy, sovereign creator of all things up the mountain. And that realization brings us to the very first line of the psalm. It is a line that many modern readers treat as a gentle, comforting reminder. But on that dusty road up to Jerusalem, it was meant as a massive, absolute claim over the entire universe. The procession has restarted. The Levites are bearing the heavy wooden poles on their shoulders. The music resumes, but the tone is completely different now. It is no longer a reckless, casual parade. It is a terrifyingly holy march, and as the crowd begins the steep ascent up the mountain toward the new capital, the song of Psalm 24 officially begins. The first words are meant to echo across the hills. The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it, the world, and all who live in it. Today, you might find that verse printed on a serene landscape photo or framed in a nursery. It sounds like a gentle, poetic reminder of God's care for the planet. But in the ancient Near East, this was not a gentle poem. It was an aggressive, absolute, and exclusive cosmic claim. In the ancient world, the gods were deeply territorial. If you crossed a border, you entered the domain of a different god. There were gods of the mountains, gods of the valleys, gods of the rain, and gods of specific cities. When an ancient king conquered a territory, he would often bring the symbol of his local god into the new capital, effectively claiming that his god was the new regional power. David's song shatters that entire framework in its very first breath. David is making sure that every single person walking in this procession understands exactly who they are carrying. The ark does not represent a regional mascot. Yahweh is not just the tribal god of the Israelites. He owns the dirt beneath the feet of the Philistines. He owns the water of the Egyptians. He is the sovereign owner of the entire board. The earth is his. The world is his. Every breathing human being on the planet belongs to him by right of creation. And the psalm immediately backs up this massive claim by pointing backward to the very first page of the Bible. Verse 2 says, "For he founded it on the seas and established it on the waters." This is a direct echo of Genesis chapter 1. In the ancient biblical imagination, the dark seas and the deep waters often represented chaos, danger, and uncreation. But the God of Israel is the one who spoke into the dark waters and brought up dry land. He is the original architect of reality. He placed the foundations of the world over the very forces of chaos that threatened to unmake it. This is what makes the procession of the ark so unbelievably tense. David is not bringing a good luck charm into his new city to bless his political reign. He is escorting the uncreated creator of everything that exists into a small, physical, stone city. When you remember the body of Uzzah lying in the dirt just 3 months prior, the opening of this psalm makes perfect sense. Uzzah died because he forgot the sheer scale of the God he was dealing with. He casually reached out his hand to protect the God who founded the earth upon the seas. The opening of Psalm 24 is David demanding that the people never make that mistake again. But this grand, cosmic opening creates an immediate, terrifying problem for the thousands of people singing it. If the supreme creator of the entire universe is coming to dwell in one specific city, on one specific hill, who can survive being near him? If his absolute holiness is heavy enough to strike a man dead for a single casual touch, who is actually allowed to walk up this mountain with him? And that impossible question brings the entire procession to a dead stop. The music pauses. The wide, cosmic lens of the first two verses suddenly snaps into a very tight, terrifying focus. The psalm shifts from the massive scale of the oceans and the earth down to a single, narrow, dirt path winding up a hill in the Middle East. David asks a question that echoes through the crowd. Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? To the modern ear, this can often sound like a poetic invitation to a Sunday worship service. We read it as a gentle call to prepare our minds for prayer. But to the thousands of Israelites standing on the incline toward Jerusalem, it was not a metaphor. It was an immediate, physical, and highly dangerous problem. Jerusalem is built on elevated terrain. To enter the city, you have to climb. But in the biblical imagination, ascending a mountain is never just a geographical change in altitude. It is a theological event. Throughout Scripture, mountains are the exact places where heaven and earth forcefully overlap. They are the specific locations where God descends to meet humanity. And in the biblical story, those meetings are incredibly dangerous. Hundreds of years earlier, the ancestors of these very same Israelites stood at the base of Mount Sinai. When the presence of Yahweh came down upon that mountain, it was wrapped in dark smoke, violent thunder, and fire. Moses was given a strict command to put a boundary around the base of the mountain. If an ordinary person or even an animal touched the edge of the hill, they would not survive. The holiness of God was so intense, it was lethal to anything impure that came too close. Now, David and the Levite priests are attempting to carry that exact same presence up a new mountain, Mount Zion. They are carrying the Ark of the Covenant, the golden footstool of the throne of God, and they are entirely aware that a man has already died simply for touching the cart that held it. So when David shouts the question, "Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord?" he is not asking a philosophical question about going to heaven one day. He is asking a practical survival question for the people standing on the road right now. Who can actually survive walking up this hill? Who has the right to step into the immediate atmosphere of the creator of the universe without being consumed? The second half of the question sharpens the tension even further. Who may stand in his holy place? In the ancient Near East, to stand before a king meant you had been granted the right of an audience. It meant you had passed the security of the royal guards. It meant you were legally permitted to occupy the same room as the sovereign ruler without being executed. David is forcing the nation of Israel to remember a massive truth. Proximity to the living God is not a basic human right. It is a terrifying privilege. You cannot just casually wander into the throne room of the God who founded the earth upon the dark seas. You cannot simply decide you want to be near him because it feels convenient or culturally appropriate. If God is truly the holy king of the universe, then no one can just walk up his mountain uninvited. Someone has to meet the requirements. Someone has to be completely compatible with the burning purity of his presence. The thousands of people standing on the dirt road knew this. They knew the history of Sinai. They knew the tragedy of the first failed procession. They understood the absolute danger of the mountain. And as they waited for the song to continue, they listened for the requirements that would allow them to keep moving. But the answer the psalm provides next is devastating. Because it lays out a standard of purity so absolute, it should have stopped the entire procession from taking another step. The thousands of people standing on the incline of the mountain are waiting for the answer. David has just asked who can survive the climb. Who is allowed to stand in the holy place of the Creator without being consumed? And in verse 4, the psalm gives the terrifying requirement. The one who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not trust in an idol or swear by a false god. Today, it is very easy to read those words as a basic religious checklist. We often read this verse and think it simply means we should try to be good people, we should try to do the right thing, avoid major sins, and keep our motives generally positive. But when you are carrying the Ark of the Covenant up a mountain, doing your best is not enough to keep you alive. David is not giving the crowd a list of moral suggestions. He is describing a state of absolute, uncompromised wholeness. In the biblical imagination, the hands represent your actions. They represent what you build, what you take, what you touch, and how you interact with the physical world. The heart is the center of the human will. It is the seat of your desires, your decisions, and your deepest allegiances. To have clean hands and a pure heart means that your outward actions and your inward desires are in perfect, flawless alignment with the holiness of God. It means there is no fracture in your character. And the next line of the verse reveals exactly what that looks like. The requirement is for a person who does not lift up his soul to an idol. The Hebrew phrasing here is incredibly profound. The word for idol literally means an empty thing, a breath, or vanity. In the ancient world, to lift up your soul meant to direct your deepest longing, your security, and your fundamental identity towards something. God is the one who founded the earth upon the seas. He is the ultimate reality. To lift your soul to an idol is to attach your life to an illusion. It is to draw your strength from a lesser God, a political power, or a human desire. The creator of the universe is stating a boundary. He will not share his throne room with a divided human heart. He requires undivided, absolute loyalty. But as this song echoes down the mountain, it creates an unbearable tension. Because if absolute purity is the strict requirement to stand in the holy place, then who is actually qualified to keep walking? Look at the man leading the parade. Does King David have clean hands? No. His hands are covered in the blood of endless warfare. Does King David have a pure heart? No. His heart is deeply fractured, and his life will soon be marked by severe moral failure and betrayal. Look at the priests carrying the ark. They are compromised men who have to continually offer animal blood just to temporarily cover their own sins. Look at the massive crowd of Israelites. They are the descendants of the very people who built a golden calf at the base of Mount Sinai. If clean hands and a pure heart are the absolute requirements, the entire procession is completely disqualified. Every single person on that mountain is in profound danger. They desperately need a representative. They need a blameless priest who actually possesses the purity the mountain demands. They need a king who is worthy to walk into the holy place on their behalf. Because the mountain is too steep and the standard is too high. But the procession does not stop. They continue the terrifying climb, and as they finally reach the top of the hill and stand before the massive, fortified doors of the city of Jerusalem, the tone of the song violently shifts. It moves from the terrifying requirements of the dirt path to a thundering shout directed at the stone walls. Because someone is about to enter, the procession has survived the ascent. The priests carrying the heavy wooden poles have reached the top of Mount Zion. They are no longer looking at a steep, winding dirt path. They are standing directly in front of the massive, fortified walls of Jerusalem. And the music suddenly changes. The quiet, terrifying reflection on who has clean hands and a pure heart is over. The mood shifts from a careful, fearful whisper to a thundering, aggressive roar. David and the thousands of people standing outside the city direct their voices toward the stone walls. They shout the words of verse 7. "Lift up your heads, you gates. Be lifted up, you ancient doors, that the King of Glory may come in." If you read this quickly, it just sounds like a poetic way of telling the guards to open the door. But in the ancient world, city gates did not lift up. They were massive, heavy structures built on iron or wooden hinges. They swung horizontally. They were designed to lock down a fortress and keep threats outside. So why does the crowd command the gates to lift up their heads? David is using a profound image of personification. He is speaking to the architecture of the city itself, and he is telling it that it is entirely too small. The gates of Jerusalem were built to accommodate human kings, military generals, and merchant caravans. But the being who is waiting outside the wall is the King of Glory, and that specific word matters. In Hebrew, the word for glory is kavod. It does not just mean bright shining light, which is how we often imagine it today. The root meaning of kavod is weight. It means heaviness, substance, and massive significance. This is why the Ark of the Covenant was so incredibly dangerous. It carried the heavy, unendurable weight of the presence of God. David is telling the city that the one who is entering is too massive, too heavy with majesty, to fit through ordinary human doors. The gates must physically expand. The ancient doors must stretch upward. The city itself must alter its shape to make room for the sovereign weight of the Creator. But the doors do not open immediately. Instead, a voice calls back from the top of the wall. In ancient fortress cities, watchmen were stationed above the gates. Their job was to identify any approaching army, king, or dignitary. When a royal procession arrived, the watchmen had a strict protocol. They had to ask for the identity and the credentials of the one demanding entry. So, as the massive crowd stands in the dirt, the watchmen look down from the stone walls and ask the question of verse 8. Who is this King of Glory? They are asking for a name. They are asking for a title. They are looking at a wooden box overlaid with gold, carried by exhausted priests, and they are demanding to know exactly who is claiming the right to rule this city. This is the climax of the entire psalm. The tension that began with the oceans of creation and narrowed to the dangerous dirt path up the mountain has now arrived at the locked doors of the human world. The watchmen are asking who has the right to enter. But the answer the crowd shouts back is not a quiet, peaceful religious title. It is not a gentle description of a distant, abstract deity. The title that echoes back up the walls is aggressive, unyielding, and victorious. And it changes everything about how we are supposed to understand this procession. The watchmen on the wall have just shouted down to the massive, exhausted crowd, "Who is this King of Glory?" The thousands of people standing in the dirt do not answer with a gentle theological concept. They do not describe God as a quiet shepherd or a distant philosopher. They shout back the powerful words of verse 8, "The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle." And then, as if to make absolutely sure the protocol of the city has been met, the watchman asks the question a second time in verse 10, "Who is he, this King of Glory?" And the crowd replies with a specific, terrifying, and majestic name, the Lord Almighty. He is the King of Glory. In most traditional English Bibles, that phrase is translated as the Lord Almighty, or the Lord of Hosts. But to understand the sheer force of this moment, we have to look at the original Hebrew text. The phrase the crowd is shouting is Yahweh Sabaoth. The word Sabaoth literally means armies. It means a massive, uncountable military host. They are calling him the Lord of Armies. This changes the entire atmosphere of the gates. The Ark of the Covenant is not just a religious object being carefully placed in a sanctuary. It is the physical footstool of the commander of the angelic armies of heaven. David is establishing the profound reality of who is actually defending the new capital of Jerusalem. It is not David's military genius. It is not the thickness of the stone walls. It is not the bronze weapons of the guards. The ultimate defender of the city is the God who crushes chaos, who defeats the idols of the nations, and who rides out ahead of his people in victory. When the crowd shouts Yahweh Sabaoth, they are announcing that a conquering warrior has returned from the fight, and he is coming to take his rightful seat of power. Look back at the whole journey of the psalm. It began by declaring that God owns the entire earth, because he defeated the dark waters of chaos and founded the world upon the seas. Then, it moved to the terrifying ascent up the mountain, declaring that this holy God requires absolute, undivided loyalty from his priests. He demands clean hands and a pure heart. And now, at the gates of the fortress, he arrives not as a quiet visitor, but as the uncontested king of the universe. The doors of the human city have to expand, because the ancient, uncreated warrior of heaven is moving in. The gates finally swing open. The heavy wooden poles are carried through the threshold. The Ark of the Covenant is brought into Jerusalem. David dances before the Lord. The sacrifices are made, and the heavy presence of God rests inside the royal city. For centuries after this day, the people of Israel would sing this exact psalm. It became a foundational part of their temple liturgy. Every time they sang it, they remembered the day the terrifying weight of God's glory was carried up Mount Zion. But as history moved forward, Jerusalem was eventually conquered. The massive stone walls were broken down by Babylon. The Ark of the Covenant was lost to history. The physical throne of God disappeared from the earth, and the people went into exile. And yet, hundreds of years later, the early Christian church began to sing Psalm 24 all over again. They did not sing it to remember King David. They did not sing it to mourn the loss of a golden box. They sang it because they realized that David's terrifying march up Mount Zion was actually a rehearsal, It was a prophetic blueprint. They realized that Psalm 24 perfectly described another historical event, an event that happened on a different mountain, involving a different priest and a completely different kind of victory. They realized that the true King of Glory had finally arrived, but this time, he had to conquer an enemy much darker than a human army. The early Christians looked at the words of Psalm 24, and they saw a perfect, breathtaking blueprint. They realized that the impossible tension of the dirt path up Mount Zion had finally been resolved. Remember the terrifying question David asked in the middle of the psalm? Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? Under the Old Covenant, the answer was always compromised. David did not have clean hands. The Levitical priests did not have pure hearts. They survived the climb only through the blood of animal sacrifices. They were temporary representatives, holding the space until the true priest arrived. But when Jesus of Nazareth walked onto the pages of history, the requirements of the mountain were finally met by a human being. Jesus is the only person who could walk up the hill of the Lord completely unshielded. He is the one with truly clean hands and a perfectly pure heart. He never lifted his soul to an idol. He never compromised his allegiance to the Father. In the wilderness, when the enemy offered him the kingdoms of the world, Jesus refused to bow. His loyalty was absolute. But Jesus did not just live a pure life. He went to war. The early church recognized that the cross was not just a place of suffering. It was a battlefield. On the cross, Jesus took the crushing weight of human sin and the absolute darkness of death upon himself. He descended into the chaos that threatened to unmake the world. And 3 days later, he rose in victory. Which means, when the New Testament describes the ascension of Jesus, it is the ultimate fulfillment of Psalm 24. 40 days after the resurrection, Jesus ascends. But he is not walking up the physical dirt of Mount Zion to enter a stone city. He is ascending into the heavenly throne room. He is returning to the absolute presence of God. And as he approaches the threshold of heaven, the early church imagined the ancient song echoing all over again. Lift up your heads, you gates. Be lifted up, you ancient doors, that the King of Glory may come in. The angelic watchmen ask the ancient question, who is this King of Glory? But this time, the answer is not an exhausted group of priests carrying a wooden box. The answer is the resurrected Christ. He bears the scars of the ultimate battle in his hands and his feet. He has crushed the head of the serpent. He has defeated the absolute power of death. He is the Lord strong and mighty. He is the Lord mighty in battle. He is Yahweh Sabaoth, the commander of the armies of heaven, returning from the fight. This is why Psalm 24 is so much more than a quiet religious poem. It is the entire story of redemption woven into a single song. It tells us that the Creator who founded the earth upon the seas has not abandoned his world. It tells us that the absolute purity required by heaven has been provided for us by Christ. And it tells us that the King of Glory is not a distant, passive deity. He is the conquering warrior who fought in the dark to win us back, and who has now taken his seat at the center of reality. When you read Psalm 24 today, you are not just reading a historical record of an ancient parade. You are reading the cosmic victory song of Jesus. Because he is the King of Glory, he has the right to invite us into the city with him. Because his hands are clean, our hands can be washed. Because his heart is pure, we are given a new heart. We do not have to stand in terror at the bottom of the mountain anymore. The gates have been opened. The King has taken his throne, and the earth is his. If this study helped you see the beauty of Scripture with fresh eyes, please subscribe so you do not miss the next deep dive into the biblical story. The ancient Song of the Mountain was never just about a wooden box entering a stone fortress. It was the quiet architecture of the day heaven and earth were finally reunited.